Multiple stories inside.
Oh yeah. If you look by the side, you can see vault entrances on the side of the Italian one. Anyone that's that tall can fit usually about a half dozen to a dozen at a time. I don't know what they foresee that's going to happen all at once. But remember, only one at a time per year, so we're making mistakes. Let's see.
Those get as hot as these small ones?
Exact same rules as everything else. Let's see. If you're a member of one of these clubs, you pay into your club every month. It's not that much, but it adds up. Once you have enough in that club account, they mail you one of those weird letters from the cemetery that in this case says two weird things. Number one, congratulations, die anytime you want because you've already paid for your own funeral. Number two, if you could just make it a little bit longer and continue those payments, you now qualify for the deluxe package, the second line of professional mourners. You heard it right, that's how it's pronounced. That's still a thing, and that's one of my part-time jobs. This would include, if you're lucky, one last carriage ride for the dearly departed. We have carriages just for the occasion that don't have benches in the back, just one long bed, fake flowers that look really convincing, and of course the glass walls around the body to keep it protected from the elements. By the way, mule and driver unprotected. This would include, if you're lucky, to surface a special little old lady wearing a 100-year-old lacy black dress and crying every step of the way next to the carriage, even if she never met the guy inside. She's a professional. She's going to make me look good. That's her job.
Wow.
Last but not least, the part that survives even bigger today than when it was invented is the second line of professional mourners, band. Now known as the second line band. That's that brass band that you probably saw in the French Quarter already, making a big amount of noise coming down the street. You wouldn't even recognize it as a funeral mostly. Well, here's the thing. It is a tradition that we've had in this town from day one that starts our funerals, our processions, our parades, and in the last 20, 30 years, thanks to folks like you, we now use them in weddings as well, which is a local joke. I mean, think about it. It's a funerary tradition you guys insist on using in your wedding. We got a punchline. The most famous of society tunes is definitely the Virgin Mary, because she should look familiar to movie fans. She's also her right hand, the first thing you see in the movie Easy Rider when they come to New Orleans. Now, just so you know, this movie is the quintessential independently made movie. It had half the budget it was going for, 20 grand. One single working camera that was borrowed. If it was broken or stolen, no movie. They filmed in 7 states, not one permit, and one special effect for the entire movie, and it's the very last scene where the guy falls off the motorcycle, and that's it. They call that a special effect. Let's see. When they come to New Orleans, they're already broken and broke. They can't afford the permit process, but they weren't doing that anyway. Instead, they worked with the early morning hours, jump over that section of wall, film from where I'm standing, guerrilla style, and if you see them touch it in the movie, there's a good chance that they actually broke it in real life. That's what brings the 1st District Police Department from across the street, come over, kick them out by force, and in the process, while looking for contraband in their stuff, they open up everything the film crew had, including the last few reels of undeveloped film on the direct sunlight. There's a very famous scene right after the cemetery that's called the LSD scene in Easy Rider. That's so the wrong name for it. After the cemetery, you're on Bourbon Street, Mardi Gras, 1968, Count to 3, Mississippi. There's a color explosion on the screen. It stays on the screen for the next 10 minutes. That's the LSD scene in Easy Rider. That's not done on purpose. That's NOPD screwing movie history up forever. And that's the first story I learned about this 10 years before I got the job. Last but not least, in the oldest above-ground cemetery in North America, before we start our way back out, I have to show you the newest thing we got to answer some of those questions. We got this big pyramid right here. It goes up a little under 5 years ago, a little over $375,000 to build it, not including the $250,000 perpetual care plaque in his case. And one day, that big rectangle will house the dead body of mediocre actor Nicolas Cage. Yeah. The pyramid shape has something to do with Natural Treasure movies. It's a callback to Egyptology, and we do have a little place in Egyptology. See, if you've ever seen a real Egyptian artifact in an American museum, from 1880 to 1930, Brooklyn, New York, and New Orleans, Louisiana. That's when and where all those things came through and came to America in the first place. And while they were here, they made an effect on our motifs. Up here in black lettering is a Latin expression that an American will sound a little bit familiar. It means all for one. And that's not a callback to our unofficial motto as a country. No, those are instructions for this tomb. You see, the weirdest thing about this tomb isn't the outside, it's what it lacks on the inside. It doesn't have that shaft in the back to throw the ashes in. No, once Nick is in, and not his wife, just Nick, the whole thing's built all for one. Wow. The second plate up here is a nameplate. No name on it, because he's not dead yet. Even in a family grave, you don't put that name on it until that first body's inside, or else it's like asking God to fill in the slot.
Amen.
Personally, and in the case of the city of New Orleans, with Nick, we could go either way. Finally, underground perpetual care plaque. For a mere $100,000 or more donation to the Catholic Church, you get yourself one of those plaques in front of your tomb. This basically gives you two simple services. Number one, if you had one of these tombs without the plaque and you wanted to do renovations, there's a special person that you have to hire from the Catholic Church, does the inspection, and gives you pointers on what needs to be fixed, and then you could start on the permit process. That same guy shows up to any tomb with a perpetual care plaque every other month, just in case. The second service, another guy shows up every other week with a broom and sweeps, and that is it. That's it. For $100,000, you can have it too, but just remember, perpetual care from the Catholic Church also implies they'll never stop. As long as there's a Catholic Church anywhere on planet Earth, they promise those two services to any tomb that has it. Now here are the two unofficial parts about the tomb of Nicholas Cage. First of all, let me double check. 1 penny. It's down to 1 penny. All right. Up until about half a year ago, so for 4.5 years, people were leaving money on the tomb of Nicholas Cage to a significant degree. I'd be able to find about $5 American, €1 or €2, and then an extra coin from somewhere else almost every day. You know why people have been leaving money on the tomb of Nicholas Cage for almost 5 years now? If you do the math, about 5 years ago is when Nick got audited by the IRS. The mean-spirited joke is, maybe you want to help him out with his bill. I don't think that's funny, so I don't make that joke. Secondly, check out around the nameplate or even the plate itself. See those oldest discolorations? Any guess at what that is? Man, you're close enough. It's exactly what you think it is.
Oh, somebody's. Oh, kids.
Those are kiss marks, and the black spots are face prints. The other story going around is that if you want to bestow on the tomb of Nicholas Cage a smooch, you will get some sort of good luck afterwards. Now let's review. I've actually met this guy 8 times, 3 times in New York, 5 times here in New Orleans, and I have never met a more negative millionaire in my entire life. If he's interested in your wishes in the least, I guarantee you a second thing. We then have to meet in some sort of restaurant so you can watch me eat this hat, because I guarantee it's not going to happen. But let's say I'm wrong and he's the world's tallest, most Italian leprechaun ever, and he wants to fulfill your wishes. Remember fact number 2. You see that big rectangle there? It's still empty. People have been leaving financial donations and smooches to an empty hole now for close to 5 years. And if you insist on being the next, as paying customers, the best I could do is to promise I won't make fun of you until like the next week. You want to take a picture of a celebrity spot, that's one thing. If anybody starts to worship, you're a punchline. Go for it, folks, because there's more stuff to show you. Usually there's 1 or 2 takers.
That's about to go on. Empty plot. The Catholic Church does not rebuild over they will not sell this plot.
We're going to wait for these folks to take off for the picture part, but let me tell you some of the story. If you see the X's and the 3 O's on the tomb, on a Catholic tomb in the south of this country, this has never been a symbol in Catholicism or real Christianity. No, that's a symbol in voodoo. And equally as interesting, it's the only symbol in voodoo respected in Haiti that wasn't created there. It was created right here by one Miss Marie Laveau II, daughter of Marie Laveau de Paris, the famous voodoo priestess and queen. If you don't think she's famous, put it this way. She's the reason why we know the word voodoo. And how many of you have ever looked it up in the dictionary? See what I mean? In addition, try to name me a second religion from the Caribbean. It's kind of weird how much we know about this one, and the reason is that it had such a great marker there in Marie Laveau I. When she came to town, we already had voodoo, but what she brought for us is voodoo for hire. That's for all of us non-believers. Even if you weren't a day-to-day practitioner of voodoo but wanted to take advantage of its magical powers to fulfill your wishes, now it was available. You could hire a voodoo practitioner, they would do the little ceremony for you, sometimes right there on the street. You pay for the ingredients, of course, but the real price is agreed to during the ceremony. If and only if your wish is fulfilled, you come back and pay that practitioner whatever that real price happened to be. In the meantime, nothing. And that's what made her famous. She had so much faith in her own power that, well, anybody who would get wishes from her would swear to the newspapers up and down that all their wishes would come true. In fact, when she dies and there's some wishes pending, some of them start to come true. And to make things just a little bit creepier, there's those that realize that their wishes were fulfilled post-mortem, so they decide, you know what, better safe than sorry. They came to the cemetery and paid that real price. Food stuff, cash was left. There's one story of a guy who ties livestock to the tomb and walks off. A deal's a deal. And this is what gives Marie Laveau II the idea for the X's and O's. At this point, other voodoo practitioners start popping up saying that if you want to use Marie's power, I'll show you how, I'll do it for you. Marie Laveau II said, no, you can do it yourself. All you have to know is 3 simple things. Where mom is entombed, how to make a sacrifice in voodoo, and how to say thank you. Now, first things first, places of power. I have a whole tour just for places of power in New Orleans. There were that many practitioners at one point. As far as making a sacrifice in voodoo, I know you're already picturing the chicken and the knife and the blood, and don't get me wrong, that would happen, but at Congo Square with the slaves would congregate. Here, it was small personal wishes, small personal sacrifices. Example, my first time in the cemetery was a good 14, 15 years ago or so. Family came into town to make sure that my decision to move to New Orleans was the right thing. I got tired of them talking, so I paid for a tour. At this point in the tour, the guide explains to me that if I leave something near and dear of mine in front of that tomb, and leave the little marks and say the wish the right way, maybe one of my wishes could be fulfilled. Well, I'm a gambling man, and that didn't cost me much, so I went for it. And I left for her, coincidentally, my first morning cups of coffee. If you haven't noticed how much caffeine is used in this tour, on my days off, I drank 4 cups with no family in town. I had a dozen members of my family show up out of nowhere, and I gave up my first cup of coffee. That's called a sacrifice, folks. If you disagree, then obviously you don't know how caffeine works. I left my sacrifice right where the owl is today, which is incredible because that owl has actually survived there for close to 2 years. Most things are either lost or destroyed. That's kind of amazing that it's still with us. Now, I left the marks on the sacrifice, not on the tomb. This is a result of previous to Katrina, very irresponsible tour guides. Before the renovations, before the not-so-hidden cameras, roving security and minimum 4-day jail sentence for defacing public property at a Catholic cemetery. Besides, use common sense. You want supernatural power from the lady living inside? Don't mess up her house. Leave the marks on the sacrifice means leave the sacrifice somewhere in front of the tomb. Never show your back to a practitioner or place of power when you're asking for a favor. It's supposed to be very disrespectful. And finally, say her name 3 times before you mention what you want. Marie, 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 heed my wish. I never want to work behind a desk ever again. Can you please help me out? 9 days later, I got the call for the buggy job, and I've been doing it ever since. I'm not saying Marie had anything to do with getting me that job. I'm saying in case she did, I came back and fulfilled step 3. I said thank you. How hard is that? Saying thank you is just like making the wish, only when you're done, you're actually done. You leave that same object a second time. In my case, a second first morning cups of coffee. But instead of the 3 X's, you put the 3 O's. And then walk off, you're done. X's mean give me, O's mean thank you. You don't say thank you in voodoo. They reserve the right to take your wish back 7 times over. I have no idea how that would have affected me. I just wanted a fun job in a silly town, and I got off cheap with 2 cups of coffee and a magic marker. Need to go through? Go for it. Need to go through or stop?
No, I want to go through.
Well, make a little room, folks. I'm sorry. That's more me not telling you guys. Well, let me get...
Not the second.
The second is that way, but let me disappoint everybody. This is Marie Laveau II, the first idol. That's the next part of the sentence, actually. So you're about 5 seconds ahead of me, sir. This is not the tomb of Marie Laveau. Marie is actually 6 rows that way, 1 row to the right. There's going to be a line before we get there. There's a line every day. That's why we tell you this story here first. See, in 1979, 1980, more or less, a book comes out that's very dry, but renews the interest in Marie, voodoo, and that sort of thing, and inspires other books, TV shows, and even American Story Covenant quotes from this book. That's the one where the same lady's played by Angela Bassett, FYI. Unfortunately, this also creates a new business in town, tourism, going to visit the grave. Sheepdown is the 2nd most visited grave in all of North America, second only to our former king, Elvis. But as the story goes, one tour guide was sick and tired of having to wait in that line to tell his tour. And I love this one. Local lore tells us he comes to work one day with a piece of charcoal, finds a tomb whose nameplate had already fallen off, made the 3 famous X's on top, and would tell his group, all right, y'all, I gotta make sure nobody else can use this stuff. This is the special stuff. This is why you guys waited for me, why they recommend only me, why my tour is special. Wow. Just like the body of Bruce Lee in Hong Kong, just like the body of, say, Jim Morrison in Paris, the body of Marie is becoming over there. There's so many people that keep showing up, and one of you will eventually do the wrong thing. Fortunately for you, the city of New Orleans has taken it upon themselves to move the body of Marie, and fortunately for you, you picked a tour guide that actually knows where you can still leave your sacrifices. Isn't that a great story? Even though it's 101% BS, keep in mind you will never come across a more polished, well-formed piece of BS in your lives, and every tour guide in the city knows a variation on it, even though it doesn't appear in a single textbook or history book. That's the oral tradition living on in the age of the internet. Fell inside, dies here about 1977, 78. And ladies, you'll appreciate this. He was a devout Italian Catholic whose job during his lifetime was making shoes for women by hand. Most tour guides refer to this as the cobbler's tomb, the profession. I did about 6 hours of research 10 years ago online. That's how long it used to take, folks. And I found the name Manelli, like Liza, but not related. The Manelli family would love to reuse their tomb. You see this concrete here, or behind over here. You see how it's flat with no marble? Both of these indicate the same thing. At some point in the past, there was a collapse. They lacked the technology or the budget to fix it the right way, but didn't want to lose the whole structure, so they sealed it up. Since 1984, when they had their next death, the Manelli family's been using the Metairie Cemetery, old Metairie Cemetery, 12.5 miles in that direction. And according to the NPR interview that I get most of this information from, they've been getting a kick knowing that you folks have been leaving sacrifices to Grandpa since 1980.
Okay, so they don't mind, or they think it's funny.
It's hilarious. Come this way, folks. We're going to go visit Marie on the way out. Unfortunately, these are the only O's. Remember, O's are the only thank yous.
Thank you.
You know what?
Everybody asks.
Gimme. How about a couple more thank yous? How about a couple more thank yous?
Thanks for the shoes that hurt my feet.
Well, they could recover, but budget.
Spirit. When they went down to South America, it became Santeria. When they went down to Brazil, it became contemplate. Wherever they brought it to West Africa,
I love when somebody else brings up something
there's
here.
some semblance.
First of all, I'm the only Hispanic tour guide in the entire city of New Orleans. And second of all, my auntie does that stuff.
So,
Yeah. Oh, there's a champagne glass of water in every corner of the house. Don't ever pick up one of those glasses of water. My dog once licked out of it once. She had to do a spell on the dog. Anyway.
You don't tell us a little about Santeria?
Well, Santeria is not involved in this. Voodoo
It's
is.
not part of voodoo. Oh, it's
Remember, Santeria and voodoo are basically the same thing. North and West Africans who were imported from the slave trade bring their religion. But